This is One on One. We are thrilled to be joined by our good friends, Angelica Berrie, who is the president of the Russell Berrie Foundation, and Mike Maron, the president and chief executive officer of Holy Name Medical Center. Good to have you both with us.
Nice to be here.
Now, normally one-on-one, but this is one-on-two because we're talking about an exciting initiative. The Simulation Learning Center, right? The Simulation Learning Center at Holy Name Medical Center. This is interesting because this is happening at your place, right? But the foundation that you head up is playing a huge role in funding this initiative. What is it, Mike, first?
It is a educational component based on simulation. So it's a new model, a relatively new model of education that we found to be very effective. What's fascinating to us is this goes back to its genesis when the three of us in 2008 went to Israel at Angelica's generosity, and we were introduced to Messer, which is a simulation training center at Kayem Sheba. And Angelica was pushing me from that point, saying, you know, you really should look at this. This is a very dynamic, very effective educational tool. It's not widely adopted in the US. They've used it in Israel to great success. You really should try to do this. And I listened to her, but I didn't really react. It took a couple of years for it to fully sink in. And now we have bought in hook, line, and sinker. It is something that we want to weave into the overall culture and fabric of Holy Name. We're in partnership with Messer. We continue to work with them in Israel.
Messer is?
Medical simulation in Israel. It's in Tel HaShomer. And it's an institute that has created a simulation model that is, I think, a model for the world to learn from. It's a transformational model. It
really is. I remember that was a very important trip for all of us in Israel that you, many times, you brought many people there. But I remember the trip, first trip Mike and I went on. The foundation, your foundation has dedicated how many millions of dollars to this initiative?
This is a $5 million initiative, and I think it is mainly for innovation. It's a way to be able to bring innovation to our community, innovation that we found in Israel, and that we felt would really transform the standards of medical education here, as well as train for reduction of accidental deaths. 100,000 people die from human error every year in the US.
Simulation learning.
Yeah.
For people who are sitting there going, so what are they even talking about? Simulation learning. Make it come alive for us.
So probably the best example that I ever heard was Amitai Ziv, the physician who runs the program in Israel, his own personal experience. So all Israelis have to spend some time in the IDF. He was a pilot. And before they let him touch an airplane, he had to log thousands of hours in a simulator flying. When he left the IDF, he wanted to become a surgeon. His very first day in surgical training, he goes into the OR, the physician hands him, the teacher hands him a scalpel and says, make the incision. He's like, it's a live patient. He goes, that's how we learn. And he was aghast that this is the difference between medicine and aeronautics as to how we train, and it said there's a better way to do this. And so at its early stages, it was about skill. It was about how to do an incision. But what Amitai very quickly realized, and we bought into completely, is there's far more. It's about integration of multi-specialty. It's how a physician communicates to the patient, how the physician communicates to the staff, how you work as a team.
That's right.
All the variables, anticipating the variables that can occur in any given event.
Simulate real-life events.
Simulate.
Angelica, but you also told us in a call we were on the other day talking about this, you said it's about the human side of medicine and simulating that. How does that work?
It's the soft skills. How do you apologize when a patient dies on the table? How do you explain to the family in a sensitive way? How do you examine an Arab woman when there's cultural sensitivities? I think these are, how do you train social workers to identify child abuse in a sensitive way in a country with diversity, like you have Bedouin children, you have Arab children, you have different nationalities. How do you train the workers to say, in this kind of home, these are the questions you should ask, you know? So I think that these are things that you learn by doing, and if nobody tests you and walks you through the paces, you'd never be able to figure it out.
And the foundation believes deeply in this. There are two examples that both of you shared. One was in Israel that you told me about, and one was in Boston that you told me about, that unfortunately real life things happened that people were prepared for because they had simulated those events. Talk about that.
In Naharia, which is the place we visited with an underground emergency room.
I remember this.
We had arranged for training, for simulation, from Messer to bring in doctors who would train the doctors at Naharia to be able to go through the paces for brain surgery. And less than 2 days after, the mayor of a nearby town was shot and in the brain, and they trained for that situation exactly. And they said if they hadn't done it just 2 days before, they weren't sure they were equipped to be able to handle something like that. You know, this is the most remote hospital on the border of Lebanon.
But they had simulated
just 2 days before.
And Mike, in Boston?
So in Boston, unfortunately, a few weeks ago, a surgeon was brutally shot in the hospital. So a family member of a former patient had come into the hospital carrying a gun, sought the physician out and shot him. And when they were doing a debriefing as to what could have been done to prevent that going forward and what had happened, they found footage of one of our simulation training at Holy Name, which was an active shooter drill, where someone comes into the hospital because the hospital doors are not equipped with metal detectors, and then what do you do and how do you respond and how do you protect the patients and minimize harm to the people that are there.
What an amazing difference. Before I let you out, I want to talk about this a little bit. This simulation thing, it sounds in some ways very clinical, even though you talked about the humanistic side of this. I'm curious about the reaction of the medical staff, the medical team, about the simulation learning initiative and the huge $5 million grant from the Berrie Foundation. What have you gotten?
All positive feedback. So all of our physicians, all of our nurses, all of our other technicians, other caregivers, even housekeepers and maintenance personnel who have participated in any of our scenarios have all been blown away, one, by how realistic they are, two, how immersive they are. So within minutes, you forget that you're in a simulated environment and you really start to act real time. But the learning that comes afterwards with the debriefing in such a compact way is so effective and retained that they actually do bring it into practice immediately. Very different than a didactic classroom setting.
And Angelica, what is it that you and your colleagues, the trustees at the Berrie Foundation, want to accomplish with this $5 million grant to the Simulation Learning Center?
Well, first of all, I wanted to add that it gives confidence to the staff, and not only that, it actually helps alleviate guilt when you debrief after you've lost the patient. You know, there's a lot of trauma to the caregivers, and a lot of them burn out from being so close to death all the time. And I think it actually helps heal them to be able to talk about it, to debrief, to say, what could we have done better? You know, and this is part of simulation.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you each a leadership question in a second, but I want to ask you this. The Berrie Awards, tell everyone what it is, the Berrie Awards for Making a Difference, because I've been honored for many years, but from the first time we started this, how many years ago?
18.
It is 18.
Yes.
18 years we've been doing the Berrie Awards for Making a Difference. Tell everyone what it is.
It's an award to recognize unsung heroes of New Jersey, and of course there are many who don't come to the forefront to say, recognize me. I'm doing this to be recognized. Nobody does that, and to find them is the biggest challenge.
Named after?
Named after my husband, Russ, who really thought that people always listen to bad news, and there's nobody who rewards people who do good things. So it's a very, very unusual idea for that.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And this year, we are going to recognize a whole range of people who are doing extraordinary things, right?
Yes, we are. It will be our 19th year.
Wow. It's an honor to be a part of it. We're putting up the foundation website so people can get more information. I have to do this. We're asking people, as part of an initiative who are leaders, the most significant leadership lesson. One really powerful leadership lesson they have learned in their work. Angelica, first, the most important leadership lesson you have learned over the years, put you on the spot, is?
To listen, listen, listen. You know, Russ always taught us that in selling, you have to listen, but I also say in philanthropy, you have to listen. You can't be a good giver that you don't listen with an open heart and understand and see the other person and understand how the need is. And that kind of deep empathy only comes from listening.
Mike Maron.
Great. Well, one of my greatest lessons actually came from this lady right here, and that was life is precious, life is short. You have to be an active participant, not just a standby. And so you need to be engaged, and those of us who have the ability also have a responsibility to take care of and look out for those who are less fortunate.
Mike, Angelica, I want to thank you for joining us and making such a big difference in the lives of so many. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Appreciate it. Stay with us. We're right back, one on two, but one on one, we'll be right back right after this.